For years. For years of my life gone, when my fiancé looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're not worthy of being my wife. I'll find someone better." The shocking part? I just laughed. But karma, as they say, has a wicked sense of humor. Now, his perfect new girlfriend has married someone else, and he's begging me to come back. The only problem for him? His desperate messages are being read by my new husband. I was with Elliot for just over 4 years, and those first couple of years, they were everything I thought I wanted. We moved in together after about 18 months, much to my parents' gentle disapproval. But hey, it was the 21st century. We clicked on everything, binge-watching the same shows, exploring every local restaurant, talking for hours about absolutely nothing. He'd do those little things that melt your heart. A hot coffee waiting on my nightstand, sending me TikToks that reminded him of me during the workday. It was just normal, happy couple stuff. I truly believed I'd found my person. When he proposed on our 3rd anniversary at the quiet lake where we had our first date, I was over the moon. The ring wasn't huge, but it was perfect for us. I posted the obligatory Instagram pic, called my mom crying happy tears, and immediately dived into planning a summer wedding. But then about 6 months after we got engaged, something subtle started to shift. It was almost imperceptible at first, like a tiny crack forming in a perfect pane of glass. He started with little comments about my appearance. Not compliments, never compliments. He'd say things like, "That dress would look better if you toned up a bit," or "Maybe you should try a more sophisticated hairstyle." I'd brush it off, laugh it away, but those comments started coming more and more often. Then it expanded. He questioned my ambition, making me feel stupid in front of his friends when I didn't know something he thought was obvious. The worst part? He'd even make remarks about my family, calling them too simple, implying I needed to elevate myself if I was going to be his wife. I wish I could tell you I stood up for myself. I wish I had yelled, or left, or even just pushed back. But I didn't. Instead, a terrifying thing happened. I started believing him. I changed my hair, bought new clothes, worked longer hours. I even enrolled in online courses because he said I needed to be more cultured. Looking back, the embarrassment is crushing. How much of myself I tried to erase, tried to remake, just to fit his ever-shifting ideal. But when you love someone, sometimes you don't see how toxic things have become until you're completely drowning in it. The breaking point arrived like a sucker punch, just 3 months before our wedding. We were discussing final details, and he brought up my wedding dress, a dress he hadn't even seen, because I'm traditional that way. He said his mom was worried I'd choose something expected instead of classy enough. I just stared at him. What did that even mean? When I asked, he simply unleashed. He launched into this furious rant about how he'd been settling for years and how he was finally realizing I wasn't wife material for someone like him. He claimed his family had concerns about my ability to represent him properly in social circles. And then came the words that carved a permanent scar on my heart. He looked me dead in the eyes and said I wasn't worthy of being his wife and that he thought he could find someone better. I just sat there, stunned. For years of my life, our shared dreams, our love, reduced to this. Not worthy? Who says that to someone they supposedly love? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just laughed. It wasn't intentional. It bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, a hysterical, bitter sound. The sheer absurdity of it all hit me at once. This man, who I'd been frantically trying to please for months, was telling me I wasn't good enough. But in that moment, I saw the truth. He wasn't worthy of me. My laugh obviously wasn't the reaction he expected. He looked utterly confused, then enraged, demanding to know what was so funny. I just shook my head, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're right," I said. "We shouldn't get married. But not because I'm not worthy. Because I deserve better than someone who makes me feel like I'm never enough." I grabbed my purse, walked out of our apartment, and went straight to my best friend Monica's place. The tears came later that night, a torrent of grief for 4 years lost, but underneath it all, a strange, overwhelming sense of relief. It felt like I'd been carrying this impossibly heavy backpack, and someone had finally, mercifully, taken it off my shoulders. Elliot called and texted constantly for days, cycling through anger, then apologies, then back to condescending threats about how I was making a huge mistake. But I stayed strong. Staying with Monica for 2 weeks gave me space to breathe. Canceling a wedding is an absolute nightmare. By the way, PSA, wedding insurance is worth every penny. My friends and family were amazing, rallying around me, contacting vendors, returning gifts. Even my mom, despite her small-town gossip worries, was incredibly supportive. The hardest part was going back to get my things. I deliberately chose a time he'd be at work, but of course, he showed up halfway through. He switched between begging me to reconsider and coldly telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. He actually said, "Good luck finding someone else at your age," as if 29 is ancient. What truly struck me was his obsession with appearances. Everyone's going to be talking. My family already told everyone. Not once did he say he loved me or would miss me. That's when I knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I was making the right choice. I found a small apartment across town, a blank canvas where I could finally just be. It was the first time I'd ever lived completely alone, and honestly, it was freeing. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, watched whatever shows I liked without commentary, and just existed without being constantly evaluated. The first month was tough. I'd wake up reaching for him, or instinctively think of something to tell him, before the cold realization hit. But slowly, I started rediscovering the parts of myself that had gotten lost. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned because he found them childish, reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from. About 6 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Elliot was telling everyone I'd had some kind of mental breakdown, and that's why I ended things. Classic Elliot, rewriting history to protect his fragile ego. I considered setting the record straight, but then I realized it didn't matter what those people thought. The people who truly mattered knew the truth. What surprised me most was the outpouring of support. Several friends confided they'd noticed how Elliot spoke to me and had been concerned. One of his cousins even reached out to say she was proud of me. That validation was a lifeline on days when I second-guessed myself. Throughout this, Elliot's texts became less frequent, but more manipulative. "Just saw your favorite movie is playing. Remember that restaurant we always wanted to try? Went there today." Never an apology, just weird breadcrumbs trying to remind me of what I was supposedly missing. I never responded. It's been 3 months since that night, and honestly, I'm doing better than I ever thought possible. My apartment feels like home. My work is thriving. Turns out I am ambitious when no one's telling me my job isn't good enough. I've even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetups to remind myself there are decent men out there. Of course, I still have moments where I miss what we had. For years is a long time. But then I remember his face when he told me I wasn't worthy, and I absolutely know I made the right choice. So, here I am, single at 29, starting over, and surprisingly, completely okay with it. I don't know what's next, but for the first time in a long time, I'm actually excited to find out. By the way, if you're still with me, navigating your own wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories like this are coming. Fast forward 8 months, and wow, so much has happened. About a month after my last post, I heard through our mutual friends that Elliot was seeing someone new. Her name was Daisy, and apparently, she was everything I wasn't. Wealthy, a fancy city job, dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Initially, this news hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Even though I knew he wasn't right for me, there's a unique pain in seeing how quickly someone can replace you after 4 years. I spent a weekend feeling sorry for myself, scrolling through old photos, wondering if I should have tried harder. But then, I remembered the "you're not worthy" comment. That devastating phrase showed me exactly what he thought of me, and no amount of changing myself should ever be about trying to earn someone else's love. Either they love you for who you are, or they don't deserve you. That was a huge realization my therapist helped me with. Yes, I started therapy after the breakup, and it's been amazing. So, I forced myself out of my apartment that Monday and met Monica for dinner. She practically begged me to come to her brother's birthday gathering that weekend. After some persuasion and maybe a glass or two of wine, I agreed. And Reddit, that's where I met Wyatt. He was Monica's brother's best friend from college, in town for the party. We ended up talking most of the night, from our favorite podcast to our biggest fears. There was no pressure, no awkward flirting, just this incredibly easy connection that I hadn't felt, maybe ever. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was loving my independence. But Wyatt and I exchanged numbers. He texted the next day, asking to grab coffee before he headed home. That coffee turned into lunch, then a walk in the park, then dinner. We spent the entire day together, and it felt so effortless. He asked thoughtful questions, and he actually listened to my answers. He talked about his family with genuine passion, and not once did he comment on my appearance, my job, or my potential. He seemed interested in who I actually am, not who I could be. We started dating long distance, if you consider 40 minutes long distance. He'd come to my town, I'd go to his. We had our awkward early relationship moments, like when his Roomba got stuck under the couch during our third date and started making this unholy screeching noise right as we were having a serious conversation. Or when I tried to cook him dinner and set off his smoke detector 3 separate times. But those moments just became things we laughed about rather than sources of tension. It was incredible. About 3 months into dating Wyatt, I ran into Elliot and Daisy at Target. I'd been dreading this moment, imagining I'd feel jealous or inadequate. But when I saw them, the weirdest thing happened. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, not even awkwardness. Just this calm recognition that that part of my life was over. We exchanged brief hellos, and I noticed Elliot looked surprised at how comfortable I seemed. Daisy was polite, but clearly uncomfortable. The interaction lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like a huge personal victory. Later that week, I got my first text from Elliot in months. Good to see you. You look well. Would love to catch up sometime as friends. I showed it to Wyatt, who just raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you want to do about it?" Not telling me how to respond, not getting jealous, just supporting whatever I decided. I chose not to respond. Some doors are better left closed. As for Wyatt and me, things progressed naturally without rushing. After 6 months of dating, he suggested I move in with him since I was spending most weekends at his place anyway. His house was older, full of character, and he'd been renovating it himself, room by room. The idea of leaving my little apartment, my safe haven after the breakup, was scary, but it also felt incredibly right. Moving in together was an adjustment, of course. We had to figure out where all my stuff would go, navigate different temperature settings. I'm always cold, he's always hot. He leaves his shoes in the hallway. I leave cabinets open. But instead of these differences causing friction, like they did with Elliot, they just seemed to balance us out. Through Monica, who remained an excellent source of small-town intelligence, I heard that Elliot and Daisy were getting serious. Apparently, he took her to meet his parents, something he and I didn't do until almost 2 years into our relationship. I was surprised by how little this bothered me. If anything, I felt a little sorry for Daisy, wondering if she was experiencing the same subtle put-downs that had eroded my self-esteem. About a month after I moved in with Wyatt, the text from Elliot started again. Nothing inappropriate, just persistent. "How have you been? Heard you moved? Hope all is well. Remember that band we saw together? They're coming back to town." Each time, I either didn't respond or kept my replies brief and neutral. I didn't tell Wyatt about every single message because they seemed so insignificant, but I didn't hide them either. Then came a day Elliot called instead of texting. I was cooking dinner with Wyatt when my phone rang, and I could see it was him. I showed Wyatt the screen, feeling suddenly anxious. "You can answer if you want," he said, giving me space to make my own decision. I declined the call, but Elliot left a voicemail, asking if we could meet up because he had some things he wanted to say in person. After discussing it with Wyatt, I decided to text Elliot back, simply stating that I was happy in my current relationship and didn't think meeting up was a good idea. His response came quickly. "I understand. I just wanted to apologize properly for how things ended. I said things I didn't mean. Too little, too late, but at least it was something." I thanked him for the apology and left it at that. Life went on. Wyatt and I settled into a routine that never felt routine. We explored new restaurants, took weekend trips, had game nights with friends. We talked about future plans casually, nothing pressured, just possibilities. And then, 6 months after I moved in, Wyatt proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture. We were having a picnic at the lake. Thankfully not the same one where Elliot proposed, and he simply said he couldn't imagine his life without me. The ring was perfect, a vintage sapphire that had belonged to his grandmother. I cried, laughed, and said yes without hesitation. That evening, as we celebrated with champagne on our porch, my phone lit up with a text from Elliot. Heard about your engagement. Didn't realize things were that serious. Hope you're not rushing into anything you'll regret. I showed Wyatt, who just shook his head and said, some people never change, do they? We decided the best response was no response, and I blocked Elliot's number that night. Whatever weird game he was playing, I was done being a part of it. The next day, we shared the news on Facebook, because it's not official until it's Facebook official, right? The outpouring of love from friends and family was overwhelming in the best way. Among the comments was one from Monica that made me laugh out loud. From not worthy to worthy of the best man I know in less than a year. That's what I call an upgrade. I probably should have been embarrassed that she referenced my breakup so publicly, but honestly, it felt like a perfect summary of my journey. We set our wedding date for 6 months out, nothing extravagant, just a small ceremony with the people who mattered most to us. That was next month, and I was feeling nothing but excitement, no anxiety, no second thoughts, just certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Oh, and the cherry on top of all this? Through the grapevine, small towns, I swear nothing stays private. I heard that Daisy broke up with Elliot last week. Apparently, she reconnected with an old flame and realized she had settled for Elliot. The irony was not lost on me. So that's my update. From being told I wasn't worthy to finding someone who makes me feel valued every single day. Sometimes the worst endings really do lead to the best beginnings. It's been almost 6 months since I posted that last update. And honestly, I truly thought I was done with this whole saga. But life has a funny way of giving you closure when you least expect it. And I just had to share this final chapter. So, Wyatt and I have been married for 15 months now. After months of searching, we finally found our first house together about 4 months ago. A 3-bedroom ranch built in the 90s, with some interesting wallpaper choices and a kitchen that desperately needed updating. But it has a big backyard for our future dog, still debating between a golden retriever or a rescue mutt. And most importantly, it's ours. Home ownership has been a wild ride. The day after we moved in, the dishwasher decided to flood the kitchen. 2 weeks later, we discovered a family of squirrels living in the attic. And don't even get me started on the bathroom sink that randomly gurgles in the middle of the night. But honestly, working through these little disasters together has been strangely fun. Wyatt and I make a good team. He's better at the heavy lifting. I'm better at organizing the chaos. After getting mostly settled, we decided to host a housewarming party, just a casual Saturday afternoon gathering with about 20 friends and family. I spent days cleaning every corner, arranging snack platters, making sure our new place looked presentable despite the half-finished painting project in the hallway. The party was going great. Monica brought her famous buffalo chicken dip, Wyatt's brothers helped set up the new patio furniture, and everyone was mingling comfortably. I was in the kitchen refilling the ice when Monica came in with this weird, urgent look on her face. She told me that Elliot was outside. Yes, that Elliot, my ex, who was in no way invited to our housewarming party. Apparently, he'd shown up completely unannounced, carrying a bottle of wine, looking slightly disheveled. Monica had intercepted him in the driveway and was trying to figure out how to tell me without causing a scene. My first reaction was pure annoyance. This was our day in our new home. The audacity of him to just show up after everything. But then I took a deep breath and realized something profound. I wasn't even nervous about seeing him. That knot in my stomach that used to appear whenever I thought about running into him, completely gone. I told Monica to let him in. It seemed easier than creating drama by turning him away. I went to find Wyatt, who was showing his dad the garage storage system he'd installed. When I explained the situation, Wyatt just raised his eyebrows and asked what I wanted to do. Again, no jealousy, no territorial nonsense, just pure support. Have I mentioned how much I love this man? We decided to greet Elliot together, keeping things civil but not overly friendly. When we walked outside, he was standing awkwardly by the snack table, looking utterly out of place. He'd clearly had a few drinks before arriving. Not sloppy drunk, but definitely loosened up. He handed me the wine bottle, which, ironically, was the exact same kind he used to criticize me for buying because it wasn't sophisticated enough. The conversation started painfully polite. He complimented the house, asked standard questions about the neighborhood, mentioned the weather, all while giving Wyatt these weird side glances. I could feel the tension building, but I kept things moving, introducing him to people as an old friend, which felt generous, but seemed simpler than ex-fiancé told wasn't worthy of him. Things took a dramatic turn when one of Wyatt's cousins innocently mentioned how happy Wyatt and I seemed, and how perfect we were for each other. Elliot mumbled something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "She wouldn't be here without me." When I asked him to repeat himself, the floodgates opened. He launched into this bizarre speech about how he had prepared me for Wyatt, how his criticisms had motivated me to improve myself, and how I should actually be grateful for our breakup because it led me to where I am now. I was too stunned to respond immediately, but Wyatt calmly stepped in. No raised voice, no macho confrontation. He simply said that while he was certainly grateful that I was in his life, my personal growth had absolutely nothing to do with being torn down by someone else. He added that we'd prefer to focus on celebrating our new home today, and maybe this wasn't the best time for this conversation. Elliot didn't take the hint. Instead, he turned to me and asked if I ever thought about what could have been if he hadn't let me go. His words, not mine. As if he hadn't been the one to tell me I wasn't worthy. The way he said it, like he was doing me a favor by considering taking me back, instantly transported me back to that night when he'd shattered my heart and my spirit in one fell swoop. I told him, as gently but firmly as I could, that I never think about what could have been because I'm too busy being grateful for what is. That breaking up was the best thing that could have happened to both of us, and that worthy isn't something someone else gets to decide for you. It's something you realize about yourself. The look on his face was complicated, surprise, confusion, maybe even a flash of regret. For a moment, I thought he might actually understand what I was saying. But then he looked around at our friends, our home, our life, and something shifted in his expression. He muttered something about how I'd changed, like that was a bad thing, and that I didn't used to be this cold. Before I could respond, Monica stepped in with perfect timing. She mentioned that she'd run into Daisy and Barry last weekend at the farmer's market. Apparently, they're expecting their first baby in the summer and just bought a house across town. She showed us all a picture on her phone, and they looked genuinely happy. Watching Elliot's face as he processed this information was like watching someone solve a difficult math problem. He seemed genuinely shocked that Daisy had moved on so completely. When Monica casually mentioned that Daisy had told her the relationship with Elliot had been a learning experience, ouch, I thought he might actually explode. Instead, he drained his drink, mumbled something about having another commitment, and headed for the door. Wyatt, ever the gentleman, walked him out while I stayed behind with Monica. Both of us try not to make eye contact until he was gone, just to avoid bursting into inappropriate laughter. When Wyatt came back, he just shook his head and said Elliot had asked him man-to-man if I was always this stubborn. Wyatt told him he preferred the term self-assured and suggested Elliot take an Uber home since he'd clearly been drinking. The party continued without further drama, though I noticed a few curious glances and definitely heard some whispered conversations. Small town life. This will probably be local gossip for at least 3 weeks. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Elliot. "I'm sorry for yesterday. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I hope you're happy." Simple, a bit ambiguous, but probably the closest thing to closure I'll ever get from him. I didn't respond. Some conversations are better left ended. So that's it. Life isn't perfect, of course. Our roof needs replacing sooner than we thought. We argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. And I still sometimes struggle with the echoes of insecurity that Elliot planted. But through it all, I've learned that worthiness isn't something you earn by changing yourself to please someone else. It's something you recognize when you're finally with people who never questioned it in the first place. Have you ever been through something similar where someone tried to define your worth? How did you find your way back to yourself? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.